Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm so excited for this special interview today. I'm your host, Bad Bubba Brewer, and my special guest has been in the pro wrestling business at an early age. He is an 8-time Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team Champion. He is a 6-time USWA Southern Heavyweight Champion, because I like the old school stuff. He is a former WWF Tag Team Champion. He was also the WWE's head trainer to train the stars, the future Hall of Famers, and the future stars of tomorrow. He has won over 25 heavyweight titles and over 19 tag team titles. I could be wrong because sometimes I can't add very well. He is the owner and head trainer of Jacob's Prichard Wrestling Academy, the JPWA. My honor and my special guest today is Dr. Tom Prichard. Dr. Tom, thank you for showing up today.
Hey, Bubba, thank you for having me today, man. I would do anything in the world for my good friend Mike Lettieri and Imagine Wrestling. So, but it's good to talk to you, and you realized that we had met before and we'd done some things before, so it's always great to catch up, man.
Yeah, thank you. And I thank Big Mike and Imagine Wrestling, and they have a show today, and I'm going to go up and see the boys. And, you know, I just love independent wrestling. I mean, I love all kind of wrestling. So
yeah. I mean, there's a variety, and there's something for everybody out there, as I found. So it's a crazy world, but it's a good world too.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Well, let's get started. Let me ask you, how did you, when you were a youngster, how did you want to become into professional wrestling? I'm sure you got this question asked a million times, but I got to ask.
Sure. Yeah, but it never gets old, because you remember the first time, or I remember the first time I ever saw wrestling. I believe 4 years old, and that's the magic age a lot of people state. You know, when I was 4 years old, I saw it. Well, when I was 4 years old, we were living in El Paso, Texas, and I was walking through our living room, and my brothers we had a black and white TV, and they had wrestling on the TV, and I just looked and saw these 4 guys, or 2 guys, whatever it was. It was a tag team match. I remember that, but they were doing a crisscross. They did a spot, and they did this crazy backdrop, did this crazy stuff. And I thought, oh my God, I was mesmerized. And right after the match, Dory Funk Sr. came out and cut a promo, and I was mesmerized. I was.
You were hooked. You were hooked right there. As soon as that promo hit, you were hooked.
Yeah, I just knew this is something. And these guys were superheroes to me. And but from that first day, I thought, oh my God, I thought this was the coolest thing in the world. Traveling, going to these exotic places, and doing it in a different town every night. Man, you're on the road. How romantic does it get?
Yeah. So when you started into the business, what kind of jobs did you have at an early age?
When I started writing to the magazines, Norm Keitzer, Jim Melby with Wrestling News, and I got to know them through the mail and through correspondence. We didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have email and stuff like that.
Right.
But I wanted to take pictures, and at 12 years old, I got a Nikon camera, and my older brother Ken actually called Paul Bosch, the promoter in Houston, asking if he would just meet with me, because I wanted to take pictures. I wanted to get in the wrestling business, and we were already going to wrestling every Friday night. We had the cheap seats, you know.
Right.
My mom liked to take Bruce and myself, get out of the house, and kind of have a good time herself. So that was her refuge as well. But when I met Paul Bosch, he let me take pictures at ringside. I sent him into the magazines. I got published with Gong magazine in Japan, Wrestling News over here in the States. Wow. A couple of other wrestling newsletters and stuff like that I was corresponding with. There was a newsletter called Pro Wrestling Digest by Ron Dobratz, one of the early newsletters, precursor to the Observer and things like this. So at 12 years old, I had my first paying job in professional wrestling.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Jim Cornette did the same thing. Eddie Gilbert, Paul Heyman. I'm sure a couple other guys did too.
Well, let me ask you this though: did they follow your footsteps, knowing that you did that to get into the business?
They were doing it independently. They were doing it the same way I was doing it. They loved the business. They were around it, and they were looking for a way in too. I truly believe.
Okay, so Paul Bosch gave you your first opportunity then into the business.
Yes, he did, and then actually gave me another opportunity when I was 15. Just had my learner's permit. I had a job selling shoes. My brother again got me that job in the summertime. Oh, it was horrible at Montgomery Ward's, and I was at the ticket office picking up our tickets and telling the ladies behind the counter how horrible the job was. And Paul had happened to come out of his office and hear me telling them how terrible it was. And he came to the front and said, you know, that job is going to give you stories to tell the rest of your life. But how would you like to work here? We had just moved him from his office at 2022 San Jacinto at the corner of Gray to the new office at 1919 Caroline at the corner of Pierce. I still remember that because we had to say it. Paul said it every week on TV. And he offered me the gig because he had some grass to mow around there, some errands that I could run. He saw my enthusiasm and my passion. So I started working at the office. Then I also was a second at ringside. You know, you take the jackets back. And I got to sit by Paul Bosch during the mid-'70s all the way through the time I started wrestling at ringside as the assistant director for the TV show.
Wow, that's amazing. That is
amazing. If you look at some of the old NWA matches from Houston, you'll see myself sitting right there next to Paul on the left-hand side.
Okay, so when you were doing that, when you were young and stuff, and you walked in, say you bumped into, you know, a name, and what was the first name that you actually bumped into to give you some advice into this business?
Well, the first name, I guess, who I worked out with was the Iron Sheik. There was a football player who wanted to wrestle in the off season because, you know, there's nothing to wrestling. All you got to do is come in and do a few stunts, and any football player can do it. Any athlete can do it. You know? Nothing to it. So the Iron Sheik was in the territory wrestling as Muhammad Farouk at the time, and Paul knew that I wanted to wrestle. I had just got some boots from K&H Wrestling Wear, so I had my pro wrestling boots. I had my pro wrestling tights, and the Iron Sheik comes in Friday morning with Gary Hart. Gary Hart was the booker at that time, and Gary would come in every Friday morning, meet with Paul, go over the matches, and go have dinner or breakfast or lunch or whatever, and then we'll meet up at the Coliseum. Well, he brought the Iron Sheik with him, and this football player showed up at the office, and Paul said, you can take them down to the Coliseum, and you can get in there if you want to. So we go down to the Coliseum. It's empty, and I had never been in the dressing room before. You know, I always respected the perimeters, and you know, I didn't want to get too pushy and nosy. But now we go into the locker room, the dressing room of the Coliseum to change, and we walk in, and it's just one big room. And now I'm going, aha, I get it. Yeah. Well, I'm putting on my wrestling boots, I guess. And I look over there at Cosro, and he's putting on his amateur singlet and amateur wrestling shoes, not wrestling boots, not the ones with the pointy toes.
Right.
No, he was putting on his amateur shoes, and I'm going, wait a minute. I don't know if this is what I think it's going to be. But I was ready to go because anything he did to me, he was going to have to kill me. I wasn't going to give up. We did a few things. Cosro stretched both of us. I screamed, you know, he put me in a hold. I couldn't tell you what it was. He told me to scream louder. And I did. Did the same thing to the football player. We did that about 2 more weeks. Cosro, or the football player, said, to hell with this. He didn't want any part of it.
Oh, he rode off the greener pastures then. Huh?
Yeah, it wasn't what he thought it was either.
Right.
But I knew, I had a feeling anyway that Cosro was testing me, and I think Paul wanted to know what the report was too, just to see, because I had told him I wanted to wrestle, and that's all I wanted to do. And I kept hearing I'm too small, and there was no chance. So,
but that drove you. That drove you to inspire and show the Sheik what you're all about.
Yeah, yeah. So he was the first guy to actually. I got in the ring with him. I don't know about advice, but I was also at the time working out with Mark Lewin in the gym.
Oh my. Okay.
He lived about 15 minutes away from me on Telephone Road in Houston, Texas, which Telephone Road isn't where you want to be found. Hell, anytime, but at night especially.
Gotcha.
Anyway, and I didn't understand that at the time why Mark was just wrestling in Houston. He was only making one town, and he was he was in the main event, and Paul paid very well. And we never really talked too much about the business back then. I didn't want to get too nosy and too far down the road with Mark to where he say, you know what, I really don't want you around me, kid. Mm-hmm. So we would go to the gym, and he trained me hard. We worked hard, and I got along great with Mark. His dad, Sid, his wife, Taruko. And, it just, I kept going. There was nothing that would stop me. Every time I had the opportunity to do something, I took it. And
so you're like a sponge, just like a sponge, soaking it up from everybody in that days, which was probably the greatest time to do it because there was so many stories that you can tell and everybody can tell at that time.
Well, it was kayfabe still back then. People still didn't,
They believed. They believed it.
They believed, and it wasn't. There was no cable TV. Again, there was no internet. There was. You had to write letters. You had to watch the TV to find out what was going on. So, yeah, just a different place, different culture altogether.
Right. So, what year did you debut as your first match?
1979. It was October 20th, 1979 in Bryan, Texas. And I wrestled El Satanico number 2. I think El number 1 had a babysit that night. But anyway, El Satanico number 2. And
that's great. Yeah, I can't remember what I did last week, let alone.
Well, this was something monumental to me because everybody, including my family and friends, they would scoff, they would laugh. You're too small to be a wrestler. You really can't do this. And
did they support you, or did they just try to? Because it's very hard to get in a business where your friends and family, they laugh and crack jokes. I mean, because I understand that. You had to prove them all wrong, didn't you?
Yeah, there was no support whatsoever. They scoffed, and when I got my first match, I still don't think they believed it. Then once I had my first match and got on the road, because I had my first match, and then I immediately started getting booked from October through the end of January, and then I went to Los Angeles. But yeah, it was one of those things where, oh, look at Tom. Well, I got a match. Well, that's great. And I'm sure he'll be back soon. And some 40 years later, I'm still happily involved.
So when you went to these different territories, did you travel by yourself, or did you carpool back in because you had to save money and stuff like that? Or
well, all the guys back then, I'm sure they still do it now. Okay. You would get in the car and split expenses, things like that. So yeah, I traveled with guys like Alma Drill, Mondo Guerrero, Chavo Guerrero. Yeah, a lot of guys.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, and did they make you pay all the time, or
no?
Okay,
we always split costs. Yeah, they tried, okay. But no.
Okay, so you said something about your brother, and your brother Bruce got you into some stuff too, and you guys worked. He got you in early in your career.
Well, not necessarily. We were working together. I'm Bruce's older brother, by the way. Bruce is the younger one. See, so I started working in the office first. Bruce started selling posters. Then when I started doing as AD with Paul at ringside, he was also doing stuff, and occasionally he would be the announcer when Boyd Pierce couldn't make it. And so he was, once I went on the road, he took my place in the office, and then Paul kind of groomed him along too, and that's how that went.
Okay, yeah, I always thought he was the oldest one. That's what I always thought. Yeah.
He's the more successful one, that's for sure. But
I think you're also very successful. I think you're so well respected in this business. It's just You know, that's just the way it is, and that's how I feel. So when I have some stuff jotted down. When you were in the USWA, you were in a heel faction. Did you like to be in the heel faction? You were with Eric Embry and Steve Austin.
I'm a heel. I
All
am
the
a
time.
heel at heart,
Gotcha.
man. No, I
Gotcha.
am a heel at heart. I learned. I can't explain why I was the way I was or why I am the way I am, but uh, growing up, um, I didn't trust anybody, and I had some experiences, and I thought, I'm not the only one that's done this. I'm not the only one who feels this way. But I'm even as a babyface in the ring.
Is it harder to be a baby face than a heel?
I don't know if it's harder. It's it's got to be what you're most natural and comfortable doing. And I was more natural and comfortable after a while, especially of being that young white meat baby face. And then I would meet, for instance, my first tag team partner in Los Angeles was a guy named Al Madrill. And Al was one of these bitter veterans, 30 years old. He's 10 years older than me. And instead of helping, he wanted to hinder. It was cool to rib the young guys back then. So I got kind of a taste of that and taste of some of the guys who weren't very helpful, and rightfully so. They were protecting their spot, and they just saw the business the way it was. And
So
well, that was what I was going to say. Is it didn't help that I was the way I was too. I didn't like people. I didn't like a lot of things that I would like to be secluded and in my own crew and wherever I was. I didn't intermix and intermingle very well.
okay. So well, what was? And you said you got ribbed. Did you get ribbed a lot by Al on the road all the time?
Well, we got ripped. I think I got ripped just like everybody else.
Okay.
And some of the
Nothing
rips.
major. Nothing major to make
No,
it okay. Just fun,
no.
shits and
The
giggles
only
thing.
the only major thing, and I mentioned this not too long ago, but a couple guys, gave me cauliflower ear my first year in the business, but because they wanted to see if I was going to cry or whine. But every night or for 3 nights in a row, they would go out there and bend my left ear down and squeeze, and I'd fight out, but they're doing the damage and they're telling me to fight out while they're still squeezing. And I'm figuring they're just being stiff
Right.
and they want to see if I'm going to cry about it, which I didn't. I never cried about anything. I had hard ways. People punched me in the eye, hit me in the chin by mistake, but things happen. So, but then I realized later on, and they even talked about it later on, and he got back to me. Look what we did to the kid. Okay, so what? You're a tough guy. That's great. But I was a kid. I was just starting out. What am I going to do against a big pro that's been in the business 15 years at that time?
Right.
But
Right.
that was the kind of rib they did too. They did that to everybody, I think.
Harmless stuff to make you tough to get you to where you're going into business now.
I think so. I
Good.
think that I
Okay.
think that was it.
Well, okay. So, can you tell me a little bit about your time working in the USWA? I know
Well,
it's a good.
I'd worked in Memphis as a territory a couple times before my last run with Eric Embry and the Texas versus Tennessee faction,
Okay.
and that was my best time there. It's where I got to know Jeff Jarrett. And Jeff had been wrestling maybe 4 or 5 years at that time, and then there's just some guys that you click with, some
Mm-hmm.
guys you come in and you have that chemistry with, and I had chemistry with Jeff, and we always had great matches. And I didn't enjoy my first couple runs there because I wasn't in the right frame of mind, and by this time I had been wrestling, oh gosh, maybe 9 years, and it was one of those things where I finally understood the mechanism that you have to go through to work the territory and be included and be featured and be part of the mix. I understood that it's a relationship business back then, whereas before I didn't care and I wasn't making relationships and I wasn't being a very good guy. So my last run was pretty cool. I got to know Jared a little bit better. Got to know Lawler a little bit better. I got to know Jeff. So it was a great territory. You got to work every night. Memphis was on a Saturday morning, live TV, 90 minutes of live TV. And then you'd go and work Nashville that night. Sunday was usually off, but they might run a spot show. And then Monday was Memphis. Tuesday was Louisville. Wednesday, Evansville. It kept us very busy. And that was an awesome thing to be back then, because you wanted to be working all the time.
Right. You don't want any stagnant downtime, because it just hurts what you're trying to do, because you're trying to make money at that time.
That too, but I mean, on your body, you don't want to get out of the ring too long. But also, man, just being on the road and being around people that you like. And at that time, I was around people that I liked being around. Mm-hmm. Jeff was good to work with. Eric was good to work with, and I was having a lot of fun.
Yeah, but those it's hard to say. Do you miss the stories and just the road trips going to town?
Do I miss them now?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm gonna.
Well, Bubba, I'll tell you this. I do and I don't, because it's not the same culture. It's not the same world. It's not the same. It's not the same adventure. I've done my sailing and traveling on the open seas, and I've been a pirate for all my life. And but I met a girl in Alabama, and didn't know
your life.
No. Man, dude, I didn't know that could happen, because I hated everything. I didn't want to be with anybody. Just leave me alone. Let me have my fun and let's go away. But I met somebody who now I don't mind being at home watching a movie and chilling out, because it's not the same road trips that we had. It's not the same culture. It's not the same world that we lived in. And I here's one of the things I hear all now, a lot of times, not all the time, but I hear it a lot of times. So when somebody like The Undertaker reminisces and romanticizes about the old days, people say, oh, he's just a carny and he's an old school guy. And what about when you guys would carry guns? And, oh, man, nobody knows what they're talking about. When Taker said something on Joe Rogan, and I went on Twitter and asked, why was this considered negative? And, oh, my God, we got so many responses. It was the most responses I've ever gotten. Well, about how toxic it was, and the toxic masculinity and all this other crap. I'm thinking, guys, you have no idea what it was like back then. You didn't travel on those roads when people wanted to kill you, or slit your tires, or break your windows, and do things that was a real thing, because those guys they believed it. They believed it, and they had real heat. These days, nobody believes it. I'm not saying that you can't have real heat, but everybody knows it's a variety show, and that's not nothing wrong with that. We have to evolve, and life is what it is. But when some of the old guys, or old school guys, or old guys talk about the old days, it's because it was so different, and it was one of those things where there was a mystery and air of authenticity, that people didn't know everything about you. Now you can go on and find out just about everything about everybody, and it kind of loses the mystique, loses the aura, the image of this magician who's about to go in front of you on a stage with four sides and has to make everything look solid, has to make everything look crisp. And now guys don't really, I think, care about that too much.
Well, I think, in my opinion, it's back in the old days. The fans used to, if they see you, they wouldn't come up to you, and they were in awe. Or now they tweet you. Now, back in the day, the guys might have to go out and get maybe get a beer and a pizza or something, and people wouldn't bother them. Now the guys go play video games, so they're not. It's just they can't meet the fans, so it's kind of different like that.
It is different, in my opinion too. But I'm not against anybody playing video games.
Me neither.
But what we didn't. Anyway, it was a different time.
Right.
Yeah, I will get going, and then all of a sudden you will get canceled. I don't want to get canceled.
Well, they say the same thing about me, Tom. So I just, but yeah, that's a thing that I always I like the old school stuff, but I still like today because it's wrestling. But let's get to another topic that I want to talk about. You went to Smoky Mountain Wrestling in 1992. Let's talk about that and working for Mr. Jim E. Cornette. I bet you that was a great fed. I just want to put it out there. I enjoyed watching it. It was great stuff, but I can only imagine working for him in that time could have been it was very, very good in my opinion. So,
Well, it was old school, and not everybody digs old school, and it was regional. It was Southern wrestling. And I grew up on Southern wrestling. I grew up on Texas wrestling. And a lot of the Texas wrestling and Tennessee wrestling were the same. The same guys came through and they did the same angles and did the same style of matches. And that was what I believe Jim was looking for when he started Smoky Mountain. When they came through with WCW and were working Knoxville, Jim would hear the fans, and the fans' reaction was still old school. They still wanted to see some old school wrestling. And he figured he could get a crew together and possibly run this area. And I'll never forget, he called me up. I was at my place in Nashville and asked me if I would be interested in coming in. So he gave me an opportunity when there were no opportunities. WWE wasn't knocking down my door, WWF at that time. Neither was WCW. So I had been in Memphis a little over a year, and he offered me a gig with Stan Lane as the Heavenly Bodies, and he would be our manager. Well, who wouldn't?
Yeah, no-brainer.
Who wouldn't? Yeah. And it was going to be an old school territory. It was going to be those kind of angles and that kind of vibe to it. And that was great. So I forever and ever will always say I have nothing but love, respect, and admiration for Jim Cornette. He gave me a break when there were no breaks to be had. Right. And, he gets some heat.
Yeah.
He gets a lot of heat for his views and some of the things he says. But everybody's entitled to their opinion. And that's what kills me today is because you have so many platforms, people can get on there and just put you on blast for whatever reason they want. And that's cool. Yeah, but Smoky Mountain was awesome. It was awesome for a lot of reasons. The guys knew what we were trying to build. Working with the Rock and Roll Express is a night off every night. Working with the Fantastics, night off every night. Working with the Gangsters, unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
God Almighty. No, but I got to tell you,
right.
The misperception of the Gangsters was so great because New Jack gets a lot of negative press.
Yes.
Right and wrong. But once you got to know New Jack, you understood that's what made him so unique. He was authentic, but he understood when to put the dimmer on and kind of lower the lights or lower the volume and come back. And he was a businessman. And
yes,
when he went out there, he didn't let anybody know his business, and that was the key. He was very authentic.
I have a quick story with New Jack. I had him on a show one time, and I give him credit because he went up against numerous amount of people, and he laid the smack down. And I was like, "Hey, Jack, the show's over. This is how I make my living, so don't ruin my job." But
right.
I always give him credit because somebody said something in a negative connotation, and Jack put these people in their place. So right. I give him props for that. So.
I do too. And he was very misunderstood by a lot of people. But again, it was one of these things. You give respect, you earn respect, you get respect. And that's the way Jack felt. And if you disrespected him, he wasn't going to let it slide.
He was not. No, he was not.
No. Rightfully so, he wasn't.
Right. So during this, did you work Smoky Mountain the whole run?
We worked the whole. Yeah, we worked it until 93. We went to WWE. Then we came back. Then Smoky Mountain. We went back to Smoky Mountain. Then it closed, and then we went to WWE full time. But
so about 90%.
Yeah, about 90%.
Okay. So I have another question. The difference between Stan Lane and your partner Jimmy Del Rey, when the different transactions of different types of the Heavenly Body team, it was different, was it not?
It was certainly different. Stan, I enjoyed teaming with. I enjoyed teaming with Jimmy too. We were all three really different people, man. Stan had already had his run, a little bit older than me, but always got along great with Stan. It's just, uh, I'm more of a loner. I'm more of the guy that would walk into a place and look around and check every corner of that establishment out.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and I'd see who's sitting over here, who's dancing over here, who's talking over here, and that was what I like to do. And if
Uh-huh.
somebody happened to walk over, I'm watching every step.
Mhm.
I don't want. I'm kind of a low key guy, and when I would go someplace with Stan, it would be like that, but the party would kind of
Move over to
migrate
you.
over, yeah, migrate our
Yeah.
way, and it would be a fun time. With Jimmy, we would walk in and he would let everybody know we're there, man. And it was, hey, we're wrestling tonight. Did you know it? But he meant well. He was having a
Right.
good time. It was his first uh, opportunity to be featured in a territory. And working with guys like the Rock and Roll Fantastics and Gangsters and stuff like that. So he was a little louder than Stan, but we were just, all three of us were different people, and I got along great with them. It's just we when Jimmy first showed up, everybody had their doubts because they were looking at him and said, "What? Guy has no tooth. He's red haired. Looks like the Mad Magazine, Alfred E. Newman." But then he went out there. He went out there the first night and didn't miss a beat. Yeah, was charismatic, and Ricky came back raving about him. Just couldn't say enough good things about him.
And that was a seal of
And
approval right there. As soon as
seal
Ricky,
of approval.
yeah.
Yeah, he was great.
So you were actually the common denominator of calmness in between those two partners in the Heavenly Bodies.
I wouldn't say calmness. I would say I was a loner, and I would look around to make sure my torpedo, when I hit the button, was going to go straight that way. I didn't want it veering off.
I
I
understand.
zeroed in on my target, and I went, that one.
So you mentioned a couple teams during the Smoky Mountain Run: the Rock and Roll Express, the Gangsters, the Fantastics. Was it the Rock and Roll Express? That was probably the greatest team that you guys faced in the Smoky Mountain. Be the top if I had to do a pole position kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I would guess so, because the original plan was to have the Midnights come in and just recreate Rock and Roll Midnights from Louisiana and WCW. But what happened was, Bobby Eaton had a contract over WCW, so no matter who was going to work with the Rock and Roll Express, Jimmy had to have the right combination, and just thank God, he called. So yeah, they would have to be the guys, because rock and roll was a proven commodity. They had already done it, been there, done that. So was sort of Stan.
Okay. So also too, I have you've done a lot of tag team stuff, and you have done some singles. What do you prefer, since you just said you're a loner?
Yeah.
So working tag teams, would it be hard for you, or do you prefer tag teams over being single competitor?
No, I learned how to do tag teams because tag team wrestling and single wrestling are two completely different animals, and a lot of people don't get that. They really don't get it. It's timing, and your partners. Both guys have to be on the same page. One of the things that hurt us, I think, as the Heavenly Bodies, was probably my attitude of, we'd go out in the ring, we'd have a great match. When we come back, I'm kind of, Jimmy's ready to go, and I'm kind of like, dude, let's turn it down just a little bit tonight, and so we kind of went our separate ways when we left the ring. Stan, the same way. Stan was, I went out with Stan a few times, and it was a great night. It really was. But I didn't know how to get close to people. I didn't know how to relate to people. I didn't know how to make that relationship work to translate into what it needs to be. Like the Rock and Roll Express, the Freebirds, two of the greatest teams I think of all time. It's because of that relationship. You know, you had Gordy and well, did I just hear something like great?
Yeah.
What was that? Okay, okay. I thought something was in our audio. I'm sorry.
Oh no. You were talking. No, it's okay.
Anyway, no. But you had the Freebirds had this relationship outside the ring as well. You had the Rock and Roll had a relationship outside the ring as well. The Steiners were brothers. You know, you had Davey Boy and Dynamite. You had this dynamic not just in the ring but outside the ring as well. And I think with any tag team, you have to have that if you're going to be uber successful or successful regardless, no matter what. And that was probably one of the big difference makers with the Heavenly Bodies.
Okay. Oh, that's good. You answered that perfectly. You answered that perfectly. So now Smoky Mountain had some association with the WWF at the time, and you guys were going up there and still going to Smoky Mountain. How did that become? How did you get to the opportunity to go to both companies at that time?
Well, what happened was my dad came up to visit me in Knoxville from Texas. And I think it was my brother who wanted to pull a rib on me and talk to Cornette and said, hey, man, let's make this promo. And here's what I want you to tell my dad to say, because he knows if my dad says this, I'm going to go, oh, God. So Jimmy tells me, so we're going to rib Bruce instead. And so it's Del Rey, myself, and Jimmy Cornette, and my dad. And we start the promo like it's supposed to start. And then my dad says something, and Jim says, you know, we understand you have another son who also is in the business. He goes, yeah, but he does that phony stuff in New York. We don't want to talk about him. And so they sent it. You know, Jimmy sent it, and Bruce is watching it with some other people in the office. And he says, oh, you fucked me. Well, I didn't mean to say that. But
no,
anyway.
You're allowed to. You're okay.
Okay.
You're okay.
But in the meantime, they saw Jim and Cornette, and they didn't see Jim. They'd already known Jim. They'd flown him up, and they'd met before and everything else. But now they have Yokozuna and Mr. Fuji. And, you know, they need a spokesman for Yoko. They need somebody that can talk. And Fuji was great at what he did, but he wasn't a great talker. So there they went, Cornette. But they knew he wouldn't come without his team. They knew they wouldn't come unless we offered something. They offered let's trade some talent back and forth. So that's how that came about.
Okay.
And I knew that even without anybody telling me, because we weren't really on anybody's high list of, hey, we've got to get these guys because they're the next coming of the Road Warriors. I don't think that was ever uttered. But I knew they wanted Cornette, which kind of was a conduit to getting us there. And
sometimes you have to politic something to get something.
By all means.
Yeah. I mean,
by all means. I was very, very, just lucky to be there, happy to be there at the time.
And it got you guys in, and then you guys had that SummerSlam 93 debut against the Steiners in their hometown. I can only imagine how you guys are facing the apocalypse of all the fans in Detroit being there.
Well, no, it really was a great time. It was a great match and a great opportunity for us, but business at that time wasn't really stellar. So they were looking for something. Yeah.
So you went now let's go transition when you get signed into the WWF at that time. Now, how did that make you full time? How did that come full time?
It happened. We did SummerSlam, and I think we did Survivor Series in Boston against Rock and Roll. And then we were going to Japan in January, I believe it was, for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it was. And they offered us a gig, and we told them we're going to Japan. But when we get back, we'd love to, because it would be in the States. And you know, there were guys making good money in Japan,
Yeah.
but here was an opportunity. We thought WWF, my God, gimmicks, videos, action figures. We got none of that. But the opportunity was there, and I will say that it was on us. It was especially on me to not speak up and not do something and not be more proactive. I was sitting in the background going, I don't want to make any waves, man, because we might get washed out, washed over, and that was the wrong way to think. You have to make waves. You've got to believe in yourself. You got to get better. And we weren't doing all the things we should do. But they offered us a gig, no guaranteed money whatsoever, just an opportunity.
And the opportunity, you ran with it. So
we took it,
yeah. So the Heavenly Bodies were a team in the WWF at that time, and then how did it transition from that to the Bodydonnas?
Well, Jimmy, I think, had decided it was about time he had gotten married, and I think he was tired of a lot of things that were going on there too, and so he had hurt his knee, and there were some issues going on there, and I'm not so sure he was real happy. But we were talking on the phone, not Jimmy and I, but me and someone else, and I just said, if there's anything else I could do there, I'd like to do it. And I got a call back a day later and said, how would you like to cut your hair, dye it blonde, and team with Chris Candido? And I said, absolutely not. They said, okay, I'll get the phone. I said, wait, whoa, wait, hold on. It's just hair. And I love Chris Candido, but I knew the package that came with Chris. And I knew that one from Smoky Mountain. And
yes, I was going to bring that up, but you already brought it up. So
I did. So I said, okay, still thinking all the time that I could talk my way out of this and get some other kind of gig. But no, we did it that way. And again, I love Chris. The tag team situation was abysmal back then. And I knew what it was going to be, and it was like, we're stuck in mud, we're stuck in quicksand, and I was drowning, or drowning, either way, drowning. Anyway, and from the first time, it was what I thought it was going to be.
It was very painful then to be
painful.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, you know what? I think again, looking at all the circumstances that colored everyone's life back then.
Yes,
it was again a different place, different time, different world, different culture. All those things we could talk about.
I mean, she was a very moody individual, and I was on and we booked her on a show, and we had trouble. So I can say that. But I mean.
Yeah, and it wasn't all her, but it was the majority of her.
Yeah,
and it just, I hate to see what's happened to her now, but I've said it all along. She just wasn't a very nice person, and to me, to Chris, to anybody. And
Karma's a bitch. Karma is a bitch, I believe.
Yeah, it really is, and I hate the fact that someone had to die, but. That's how it ends up. I mean, it's jails, rehab, or death.
Yeah,
and,
terrible. So, but I mean, the pain that you had you tagged with Chris. Okay, it was great you tagged with Chris. Now I'm going to say her name, Sunny. Dealing with Sunny. The caveat is you guys got an opportunity for the WWF tag team titles. It was a small caveat of the price you had to pay for that situation.
Yes, but once again, and I've had somebody say, "Well, you got the tag titles, right?" Yeah, I don't think that really mattered a whole lot. We were working with the Rockers, we were working with Smoking Guns, we were working with the Godwins. Not that there was anything wrong with those teams,
right?
But they weren't the Rock and Roll Express, they weren't the Gangsters, they weren't you know,
Road
some of the other
Warriors, Legion of
road
Doom.
warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
knew, and it was not. I'm not discounting it. At the same time, we're saying I know what it was, and I
Mhm.
know. Okay, great. Here's a bone for four weeks or however long we had it. I don't even know
Right.
how long we had it. 4 months.
I got it in the notes. It was very
It ain't
brief.
much.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
very
mean,
brief.
yeah, but I mean, God bless you. I mean, you had that would be your mania moment. I believe everybody has a mania moment. WrestleMania 12 I have written down in '96, and you guys beat the Godwins. And I mean, seriously though, it's
I agree.
I respect you, and you've been to a place where some people like myself never been. So I respect you for what you've done, and but I understand dealing with the craziness. I don't know how I could have done that either and been professional. And my hats off to you, Dr.
Well,
Tom.
no, and I appreciate. I know what you're saying. I totally understand it because again, I talked to a guy. Sal the Pal in NWA, he always comes over and says the Bodydonnas were one of his favorite teams. And I look at him in the eye and say, just shut up. Get away from me. But he's a great guy. No, I love Sal. But you know, looking from the outside in, it looks a lot different from looking at it right up close, going, oh my God, another night of this. So I used to walk behind. Real quick story. I used to walk behind when we would go to the ring. Sonny would be leading.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no doubt.
and Chris was right there with her, kind of. And I would walk about, I don't know, literally 10 or 20 feet behind.
Holy shit!
Oh man, I didn't want any part of it. And George Steele came to me one night and says, "Hey, come here. Let's not tell everybody our business. You walk with the team, okay?"
Uh-huh.
And I said, "No, George, I'm just not feeling good." He goes, "No. This has been going on every night. I know what's going on. Just be a pro and walk to the ring with your team." I said, "You got it."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you did the professional thing. So, I mean, now that the tag team stuff is done in '97, you got a chance to become the head trainer, which this is why I respect you so much. Um, I respect you for what you've done for this business, but you got to be a trainer. Could you tell a little story on how you got to become the trainer of some major stars that we have seen and are seeing now?
Well, it was actually in '96. It was the summer of '96.
Oh,
Chris,
I'm
Chris,
sorry.
had broke, yeah, no worries. Chris broke his neck, and he was out for a while, and then we figured he'll be back. But then time had passed, and uh, I had helped some guys in Houston when we were both home. Bruce and I went over to a place. Tug Taylor had a ring in Houston, Texas, and he
Okay.
just had some guys training back and forth. And Tiger Conway Jr. called me and asked if I wanted to go down that night and just see what the guys had and maybe get in the ring with them. And I just shown him a couple ways to get in a headlock, go behind, or a takedown here and there. So Bruce had mentioned events because they were looking to do something like the power plant.
Gotcha.
And while Chris was out nursing his broken neck, met with Vince, and he offered me the gig. He said, we're going to start training people. And I understand you train some people. And I explained the same story to him. He goes, well, okay, that's fine. Are you interested in doing this? I said, yes, definitely. He goes, well, that means you're going to have to spend some time in Stanford. And I said, okay, then I guess I'm going to have to spend some time in Stanford. When I moved to Stanford, and I was living downtown, I think it was I don't think it's a Marriott. It was a Holiday Inn right down. Have you ever been to Stanford?
I've been to the office. I tried to get in; they were locked. But it was a
Oh,
place.
oh,
It was a place where you never thought an office would be. But
right. Well,
yeah,
it's like a pirate ship going down 95.
yeah.
You see that big black flag. But downtown Stanford, man, it had a hotel. I think it might have been a Marriott or a Sheraton or something like that. And that's really put me up for the first 4 or 5 months. And it was Achim Albrecht, Mark Henry, and
What's his name?
what's his name?
What's his
Yeah,
name?
that guy, Dwayne
Yeah,
Johnson. So
yeah.
they were the three guys, and we were in the studio. They put us in the warehouse, and every time we bumped, every time we took them up, they had to shut down production. It bled through. They hated us. They hated us. So anyway, that's how that came about. It was just an opportunity, and I took it, and we went from there. And once again, you don't know if you can coach until you do it. You don't know if you can uh, do the right thing until you experiment and you do the wrong thing, and then you try something else, and that's the wrong thing. You try something else, and that's still the wrong thing. Then you hit on something, you go, "Oh, he got it." And the first finishing move I gave The Rock was a shoulder breaker. And not too many years ago, he sent me a message saying, "Yeah, that shoulder breaker really got over, didn't it?" No, it didn't. And I know it. I get it, Rock. I understand. It was cool. And you did okay. You're doing just good.
Right,
You're doing
right.
great. Not just good. You're doing great. So, but anyway, yeah.
Let me say, out of the three of your first three students, because Mark Henry had no grasp on the professional wrestling stuff at that time. So actually, would the Dwayne be the closest out of the three to actually be wrestling ready? Even though he had some matches and stuff like that, but
I think they were just bringing him in to get him ready for Survivor Series. So that was the key on that one.
Yeah,
Flex my view from Memphis. He'd been in Memphis for a few months, and then came in August to get ready for November. So yeah, it was he was the most ready, but Mark Henry was a wrestling fan. Occam Albrecht wasn't a wrestling fan, bodybuilder, great guy, nice guy. Had some good times with him too. But he just didn't get it. I worked, and I had to go on the road with these guys too. And I'd wear the hood, wear the mask, and be Dr. X.
Gotcha.
And I'd get a concussion every night from Occam.
Oh yeah. So yeah, you probably got way more than I got.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think so.
So you worked at OVW, HWA, Deep South, and then you went down to Florida Championship Wrestling, which is now NXT, to train. So you had the potpourri of the whole WWE territorial at that time. So you were the lead guy. So would you go in and see, and because you said you like to observe situations, would you just go to these places and just observe at first to see what guys had or doesn't have?
Well, yeah, but I was in Stanford, and I would go a week. I would go down to OVW for 3 days, Cincinnati for 2 days, and fly back. And then I would be in the office the rest of the month. But every month I would spend a week in OVW and HWA. So I wasn't down there the whole time, but I would observe, and I would talk to Rip Rogers and Les Thatcher on the phone, and how they were doing, how the prospects we had our eyes on were doing. And also they videotape it. If we had anything we wanted to look at, we had it right there in our hands.
So when you went to these places and just sat and observed, was there anybody that just sparked, just like snapped the fingers and knew that they have places that they need to go just from watching them?
Well, yeah. I mean, we knew when Batista came in for a tryout in Stanford at the studio. And when I locked up with Batista, he had already been trained with the Wild Samoans, with Alpha. And you could tell he had a feel for this. He didn't fight me when I tried to reverse it. He understood selling, in my opinion, at the beginning. The other guy was Lesnar and Cena. The other two guys were Lesnar and Cena. You could tell by looking at those guys. And Randy Orton's another one that came in for a tryout. He had been wrestling around. Randy had been wrestling around St. Louis with some of those guys, and trying to do all the flip, flop, and fly. And Bob would tell him, "Hey, don't do that yet. Just save that. Save your body, because you're going to get hurt." And Randy didn't understand that until later on. And nobody really gets it until later on, because when you're young, dumb, and full of piss and vinegar, man, you want to show everybody what you can do. But what you can do is tell a story, and that's what this is. It's storytelling. It's not just big moves, because without the emotion, without the feeling, without the storytelling, they're just big moves, and they mean absolutely nothing. I watched a match this morning between George South and Zuka King in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. George sent me this match, and I watched it.
Yeah, George just won a title last week.
That's the one. That's the
Yeah.
one. But I've worked with George, and there, look, if I may, I don't believe in stalling. I don't. But when you don't touch for 15 minutes, and I know they're hanging from the rafters, they're screaming, okay. Well, they actually were. I worked with George, and for 15 minutes he was out of the ring. He'd come in, but we never touched.
Nice.
What I tell guys is it's not stalling because you're working the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
This match was with George and Zuka King. They're telling a simplistic wrestling story. And at the end of the match, the people pop. Yes, it's Winston-Salem, North Carolina, South Carolina, whatever it is, north or south. And my point is, if they just went out there and did the big moves, it wouldn't matter because.
Right. Oh, I agree with you. I totally agree.
Okay, I was going to tell the Jim Cornette story.
You can do whatever you want.
Okay. If you walk into a store, or let's say you walk into your house, and out in front of your door are two elephants fucking, you're going to walk in and go, holy shit, there's two elephants fucking out there. If you walk in the next day and there's still those two elephants, and you go, holy shit, those two elephants are still out there fucking. By the third day, you go, oh, there's those fucking elephants. So you do the high flying spot, first match, holy shit, holy shit. Do the same high flying stuff, second match, holy shit, holy shit. Third match, you're doing the same thing, holy shit, what's at the concession stand? I've seen it, I've done it. Okay, you need to have emotion, feeling, and to get people invested in the match, and that's what George and Zuka King did. He won the belt. The people popped. It's storytelling 101, and that's what we're trying to impress on people, man. It doesn't matter how many Coronas or toupees or a hurricanrana and a tope. I know what they're called, but I make it's just the point is, it doesn't mean anything if people don't care. And how do you make them care? You've got to find that. That's the talent. That's what we're looking for, is people people who know how to tell a story and get people invested in them.
The small stuff means more. Less is more. I was always taught less is more. And I think you probably said that. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, when I saw, I don't know, I'm sure you know him. When I saw big time Bill Collier in Indiana, I'm from Indiana, Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania here. This is where the show is being produced here. But when I seen him get in a ring, I knew, I just had that. I mean, and God bless Bill. He is such a phenomenal athlete, and he's great. And I always say that he always should be higher than where he's at. But right. I mean, due to where he's at. But I knew the first time I saw him, because I was on the phone calling, and that was many, many years ago. But I just wanted to ask you that, knowing that you have been a trainer and you could sense and you can see and you could tell when people have it and when they don't.
I think the key to being a great coach or a great trainer is to unlock the potential people have and to let them see what they have. And you can't do it the same way with everybody, because some people react better with a pat on the back, and some people react better with a kick in the ass. And there's that much distance between a pat on the back and a kick in the ass. So you got to figure out, do I say good job, or do I say, no, I know you can do better and you're doing horrible right now? Because I want the guy, when I say you're doing horrible, to say, I'll show you. And that's what I'm looking for, man. So when I do that to somebody, they think I'm picking on them, and some cry, and others will go back and say, I will show you, man. And
right.
Perfect. Right. That's what I want.
Right. So now that you have founded with Glenn Jacobs, otherwise known as Kane, you guys have founded the JPWA in Tennessee. Now, how did that became to be? And I know I've seen the videos and I see you promoting it all over the place. So how did that became to be after your WWE training thing, to get these young new superstars of the future and get them to where they need to be?
Glenn and I were talking at lunch, and I mentioned I had a seminar to go to, and the next day was a function event somewhere, and he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I was just thinking. Uh, I live in Knoxville. You live in Knoxville. Why don't we open up a school and see what we could do?" And I thought, absolutely not. Oh my God. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with the indie bullshit.
I hear you.
I don't want to deal with the indie pettiness. I don't. I just want to do my stuff, man. I just want to do my thing. But I thought about it and said, yeah, that might be a good deal. It doesn't hurt to have Glenn Jacobs backing you, and he's more of a backer. I'm the guy who gets in the ring and will train the guys, or
Gotcha.
He comes by and he'll offer his advice, and he's gotten in the ring before, and he's shown guys this too. Right now, as the Knox County mayor, he's got a lot on his plate, but he does make
sure does.
But we were talking about it, and we decided to do it. We're on our 5th year now.
Congratulations.
We just moved. Yeah, thank you. We just moved from one location to another location in La Follette, Tennessee, which is they have a great building. It's called the SPCW Sportatorium.
Ooh.
And they actually named it after the Dallas Sportatorium because I asked. And It's great building. And we've been in it now just a little over a month. But we got some great prospects, and this is our Monday. We'll start our 10th week of a 12-week program. That's what we do. We do 12 weeks.
I was just gonna ask you. So you already knew. You must be Johnny Carson. You'd be able to read minds.
I've talked about this for a while.
That's okay. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But we do 12-week sessions. We do 3 12-week sessions and 1 10-week session. We do winter, spring, summer, and fall. The winter is 12 weeks. The spring is 12 weeks. Summer is 12 weeks. The fall is 10 weeks. So we take a week in between to recoup and charge our batteries, and then we do it all over again. But we have an advanced class from 3 to 6. Then Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, we train the beginners from 6 to 10.
Wow.
At night. Yeah.
Okay.
That's 4 hours a night. For me, it's 7 hours a day, which is awesome because it's a regular gig, and it kind of keeps me going too.
How many are in a class at a time? So you don't get.
It varies. This class that we have right now is 6. I've had as few as 1. And we go the 12 weeks and try and figure out 4 hours for one person to do. We did it. We made it work. But
they're soaking up all that knowledge with you one-on-one, and you can't buy that anywhere though.
Well, it's one-on-one. We're also watching matches. We're doing tape study. We're doing match study. We're understanding why something is being done. And if I may, again, explain why it's important to watch older matches. And my good friend Sin Bodie is the one who imparted this bit of wisdom on me. He said, it's like you're mining for gold. Some days you may just find rocks, mud. The next day you may find that one nugget that you didn't know was there, and you got it. So you can watch. Yeah, it's great.
That's a good analogy.
But I got to give Sin credit for it. It is. You're looking for that one nugget, that one move. There's a match, Buddy Rogers versus Pat O'Connor, where Rogers wins the title. Pat O'Connor does this walk around arm bar, and it looks like he's killing him. Nobody does it today because nobody wants to work a hold. Nobody knows how to work a hold. I'm not talking about on TV where you live there and people are boring and sleeping. I'm talking about in some of these house show matches. And a lot of the guys who do independent shows or do some of these smaller shows, you do something different, and it gets around, it gets over. You'd be surprised how word travels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me, I got a couple more questions because I know you're a busy individual. Sure. You have the doctor in front of your persona. Quick story, how did you get the Dr. Tom gimmick to your name? Robert
Fuller. I don't know if it's a quick story, but I can tell you real quick.
Okay.
I could try it as quick as I can. How's that?
That's okay. That's good.
I was in Alabama, and, after I broke my ankle in Louisiana, actually in a tag match with Pat Rose was my partner. We were called the Heavenly Bodies, ironically enough, against the fabulous ones, Steve Kern and Stan Lane, who, ironically enough, would become a Heavenly Body as well, Stan Lane. So we're in Louisville, Kentucky, and Stan comes over and hits me off the apron. As I go down, I land on my right ankle, and I hear something go snap in my head. And I went, oh, God, ouch. But I have to go in and finish the match. And in Louisville, you had 2 flights of stairs back down to the locker room. And I was hobbling all the way back and thanked everybody. I didn't take my boot off for a little bit and then took a shower, and my ankle was swelled up. But of course, I didn't think I broke it. I go a week wrestling on this, have somebody tape it up every night. Every night. Shit. Yeah. And the next week, we're back in Louisville. I'm in one of the smaller dressing rooms, and somebody else is taping up my ankle. Bill Dundee walks in. Now my ankle is completely black. And Dundee says, hey, you might want to have that looked at, mate. And Sherry Martell, who was our manager at that time, came in and said, I am going to come pick you up tomorrow, and we're going to go to the hospital. Her roommate, Tina, worked as a nurse. She took me to the hospital. Sure enough, it was broke. They put me in a cast right there. Back then, no guarantee contracts. You either worked or you didn't get paid. So Sherry said, we're going to go back to the hotel where I was staying with 3 other guys, Wendell Cooley, Billy Joe Travis, and a guy named Taurus Bulba. 3, 4 smelly-ass wrestlers, in a hotel, and we're living the wrestler lifestyle and just going to the towns, making the towns, and one guy's gone, the next guy comes back with about 3 friends, and they're up all night. Anyway, so Sherry comes and gets me, and Tina gives me some scrubs to put on because they're easy on, off. I'm going to have the cast. I go home. My dad, after staying a week with Sherry and Tina, I say, look, these guys aren't making a lot of money either. They can't support me. They can't feed me and do all this stuff. So my dad and a friend of mine came up, drove my car back to Houston. I'm sitting in Houston with nothing going on. Brad Armstrong calls me, asking if I want to go to Florida. Of course I do, Pensacola. I get there, meet Robert Fuller, Jimmy Golden, great guys, great territory. I'm on the beach. I'm having a blast. But I'm in that junior heavyweight spot, and I knew where that spot is, and there ain't no rotating in that spot.
Right.
Well, Robert Fuller had a friend who wanted to be in the wrestling business. He was traveling with him to and from, and they do an angle on TV where they beat up Tommy Rich, and then they go to the interview stand and say, look, that's what's going to happen every time Jimmy Golden and myself, Robert Fuller, get in the ring with these guys. We're going to cut them up, beat them up, but we got our cut man right here, Dr. Love, who makes sure our pretty faces don't get scarred. And this guy right on TV says, that's right, we'll see you next week. And they got a nice picture of him on TV. So it airs the next week, and airs on Sunday, great angle. Robert's thinking, oh, this is it. We got a great angle going. We're going to make a lot of money. Well, that Sunday morning, the FBI calls Robert, says, hey, we've been looking for this guy.
Holy hell.
Yeah, he's on the top 10 most wanted list in Alabama, actually in the country. Robert says, well, I don't know who he is. He's just one of those guys that sometimes comes and stops by, and we use him as job and things like this. So Robert has to ixnay the angle. But I'm riding with Robert and Jimmy and Jerry Stubbs to Panama City, and we stop at a 7-Eleven, and I happen to be wearing my doctor pants, my scrubs. And as we get out to get a drink, Robert looks at me and says, oh, my God, boy, you could be our doctor. So he made me a doctor right there in the parking lot of 7-Eleven.
7-Eleven.
On the way to Panama City, Florida. That's how I became a doctor.
Oh, that's a great story, and it went from Dr. Love to Dr. Tom. That's been
well, yeah. Dr. Love was no longer being, so I would just
no. You don't want the FBI coming after you.
No.
So I have a couple questions before we wrap this up, because like I said, I know you're busy. I know you got training and stuff like that. I got a couple questions, and in one word or a couple words, the hardest worker in your opinion.
Well, right now.
And the first person that pops into your head, the hardest worker ever, in your opinion. We could do it that way.
Man, I got to go with The Rock, because he was the guy who never stopped doing something. He was a guy who had the ambition. And right now, though, I think the hardest worker is Roman Reigns. And I say that for numerous reasons. Yeah.
Gotcha. The most potential you ever saw that didn't live up to the hype in a worker.
Wow.
You don't have to. You don't have to say it if you don't want to. You're like, Bubba, I'm gonna skip it.
No. I think when I see a guy like Sid Vicious who had all the potential in the world, and he accomplished so much, but I think there was so much left that he didn't accomplish, and I just thought he had a lot more to offer.
Okay. An angle that you knew of that never transpired that you thought could and would have made a lot of money.
I couldn't even fathom. No. I couldn't even, there's so many angles. There's so many that just kind of go in the toilet. I don't know.
So what about let's do an angle that you thought of that could make money but never transpired? Or
okay. I'll tell you an angle we did in Alabama. Dirty White Boy hung me in Alabama. We did the hanging angle. Have you ever seen that?
I think I have.
Okay. Didn't translate into money. Didn't translate. We thought it was going to be great, and it kind of went,
yeah. You definitely answered that question. You definitely did.
No kidding.
The craziest thing you ever seen working a show could have been out of the ring, something that you're like, holy hell, I can't believe that just happened. I'm sure it's.
Well, the craziest thing had been Owen. That was the saddest thing. Owen, in Kansas City when he fell. That was insane. Yeah.
That was terrible.
Terrible.
Yeah, I mean, there's no words that could describe because we're just going to move on. I don't want to.
There you go.
Yes. A match that you were in that you were most proud of.
Oh man, I think any match with Brad Armstrong and Jeff Jarrett, because all those matches, I don't recall ever having a bad match with either one of those guys.
Okay. Another question. How do you see pro wrestling business in the next 5 years?
Drastically different than it is now. I don't know how, but I certainly see that it's going to be a lot different because maybe, look, I'd like to see it go back to the way it was.
I hope
at the same time. Yeah, at the same time, I don't know if there's a market for it unless there's guys who know how to tell stories. And how do you learn how to tell stories? It's by listening to people who know how to tell stories and watching people who know how to tell stories. And I don't know if anybody's really going that route.
And my last, because I know you've done some seminars, and I just want to say before I get out of here, I did take one of your seminars, and you made me do a leapfrog in the routine, which I've never done a leapfrog in any of my training. So yeah. And the first 5 minutes I was in the ring with you, I was nervous as shit, and you told me to quit crossing my legs, like quit walking like I was on a tightrope. So and that was many years ago, and it's always. I bring that up in stories, and your training and stuff was very influential towards me. And like I said, Sean, before when we were off air, we tried to use that concept when we were doing some training at the APWF at the time. And I'm honored that you're on the show, and I commend you for what you're doing. You're very well respected in this industry and by me. And the last question I have for you, Tom, is one word, how do you describe Dr. Tom Prichard?
Grateful. That's all I can say. And you know what, man? It really did change the way things happen every day when you wake up grateful for something. And I would hear that and I would cringe. I don't want to hear that shit. Take it walking. Tell it walking. And then the youth is wasted on the young because it takes time to really understand. You have Well, I have so much to be grateful for. Just the chance, just the fact that I'm still doing something. As much as it's changed, it comes right down to the fact that I still love professional wrestling. I still love what I do,
Right.
and I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to do it. And I'm grateful uh, for the people I've met, and I'm grateful for the things I've been able to do because of wrestling. So, just one word: grateful.
That is a very good word to be
Mhm.
had. Um, so how can people get a hold of you on social media so you can plug yourself and do anything you want to do right now, Tom? It's safe
Awesome.
here.
Well, let me just start out by saying you can check out jpwrestlingacademy.com to find out all about JP Wrestling, Jacobs Prichard Wrestling Academy, JPWA. Go to jpwrestlingacademy.com. I have a book. Also, let me just get this
Go
over
ahead.
here. Yeah, it is a curriculum. I named it. I gave it a long name intentionally, and just because a complete 1 year training curriculum and guide for the beginners and seasoned pros, the pro wrestling curriculum, advice, suggestions, and stories to help the aspiring pro get to the next level. You can also find this book at jpwrestlingacademy.com, and I'm on Twitter at Dr. Tom Prichard, Facebook as well. So really, that's about it. We start our next session. Gosh, April 3rd, I believe it is. But we have all that information on the website.
Well, thank you. And every independent wrestler in the world should have that book in their gimmick bag when they're going to shows.
Well, they should.
They
And
should,
again,
but
yeah,
you know,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
there's a lot of routines, a lot of spots in here. There's some suggestions. That's why I say it's not this came about because WWE wanted a 1 year curriculum, and I said there's no such thing. Everybody's individual. We can't just do 1 year straight. This is how you do it. A, B, C, D, E. That's the problem today. You have to learn it as you go. If we're not feeling a crisscross, drop down, leapfrog, hip toss, backslide, whatever it is that day, then we're going to change it, and I'm going to make it to where we're going to break it down, and we're going to change what we do to get you into the right mode of thinking and get you relaxed and get you more confident. And then we'll go to a little more intricate spots and details. And it's all really in the details. It is the little things that add up to the big things. It's not the moves. It's what you do in between the moves. Do you have charisma? Do you have that feeling, that emotion? People know when you do, and people know when you don't. So there's a lot of things that goes into this that we can talk about all day long, but we already
Right.
have. So
No, right. And I like I said 16 times over, I totally appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on the Triple B Experience. You're a friend and family of the show now. So
awesome.
anytime you want to come on, you let me know and we can
Well,
shoot the
anytime you
shit.
want me to come on, you let me know. How's that?
Okay, I totally appreciate it. Like
Cool.
it's been an honor. I might be an old man, but today feels like Christmas for me because I
Awesome.
respect you. I respect you what you've done and what you are doing. And every independent wrestler, if they're not taking the knowledge that you're presenting to them at these seminars when you're traveling all across the United States, it's on them. And they're not doing what they need to do. They can pay their money instead of buying shit. They go buy a seminar with Dr. Tom Prichard. I mean, so
Well,
I
I
want to thank you.
appreciate that. I appreciate that, Bubba, and thank you for having me on today too. And like I said, further, man, anytime, just let me know.
I will. I will do that. So, Tom, thank you. Have a great day. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. It's been a special interview with Dr. Tom Prichard. Thank you guys and have a great day.